Hi, welcome to Drama 203, lecture number 6, and our final lecture for this semester. We are going to end the semester talking about failure. And it's an oxymoron in a sense. And I know, and I've said this before, I know that in an academic setting and you're in school and the idea of failing is terrifying and not really good. It's a little counterintuitive. But failure is not about grades or marks or all that extra stuff that gets put onto it. It's about making attempts. It's about taking risk. It's about trying something new to take you to the next level. And we're going to discuss, there's a reading up on D2L, the final reading from this book, Finding the Next Steve Jobs by Nolan Bushnell. Bushnell is a really fascinating individual. He's an entrepreneur, he's a businessman, and this is mostly about business. And he founded Atari and Chuck E. Cheese. So I don't know how you put those two things together, but this is what he did. Sorry for the sirens outside if you can hear those. And he was also kind of famous for giving Steve Jobs one of his first jobs. Sorry for the pun. Not at Apple, but at Atari. And he tells an interesting story of where he would say that Steve Jobs would be a very hard hire now, mostly because he was difficult and he didn't kind of follow the regular, go get 'em team kind of attitude. And even when he hired him, he went to the team that Steve Jobs was going to work in, and he basically told him ahead of time, listen, you don't have to like this guy. This is not what it's about. You don't have to like him. He's going to be a little difficult, but just listen. Listen to him, listen to his ideas, listen to what he has to say. And this is where we can get into, the kind of iconoclast or the visionary. And most of the time, these individuals are not necessarily the easiest people to be around. And I've talked about Prince, and I've talked about other people, and these kind of very successful people have this drive. And success is in quotes, right? Because that's got to be whatever it means to you. But there's that dance that you have to do between taking risks, failing at things, and also trying to work in a group, or if you're at a company, you have to kind of follow some rules. You can't just run around like a mad person. But failing is fundamental when it comes to creativity, because no innovation, and I've mentioned this before, no innovation really gets accepted kind of first off. And this is a really kind of, it's a simple book, it's an easy read, but it opens up a lot of it frees you. It kind of releases some of the shackles when we're talking about this idea of failure and risk. I've had a number of emails over the course of the semester about some of the projects, and there's always this sense, and I feel this and I understand this, so it's not kind of you're doing a thing and I know better, because I've been in this place too, and I still am from time to time when I'm trying something new. There's this idea of trying to get it right. I want to get it right. I want to make sure I'm doing something correctly. It's not a bad instinct. It's a great instinct. Why would you want to get something wrong? But that can put constraints on us. When we're just trying to get something right, we will ignore creativity, we will ignore risk, and we will ignore failure because we have to get it right. And I fully understand that in your situation, it's a school course that, getting something right is part of the game. But when you start something, you don't know if it's going to be right or wrong. And it shouldn't really factor into the thinking. You're starting something to be creative, to open up possibilities, avenues, new directions, whether it's business or whether it's art. It all kind of covers the same ground. And I want to read a little bit from this, and it's just a bit of the philosophy that goes around with this. So he writes, Taking risks shouldn't be considered an option in the 21st century. It is necessary. Yet too many companies have become so risk averse that when quick, decisive, powerful action becomes imperative, they can't take it. And that is the primary reason why companies must allow their creatives to take risks. Today's business environment changes so rapidly that at any moment another company can come along and take away your customers. A risky move is generally necessary to fight back. But if your company doesn't have a culture of risk taking, you won't know how to do it when the need arises, and it will. So that's a business context, and it's a broad and very general kind of comment, but the fundamentals of that are extremely sound. And the same thing can apply with just your personal creativity. Right? If you come up with an idea and you squash it, or you overthink it, or you try and make it perfect right off the bat, somebody might come along and present that idea in a rough form, and then things can get built on that and you're left on the sidelines. That idea of immediately kind of just jumping into the deep end is extremely important. And it becomes a practice. If you are constantly pushing aside the creative or the risk because you don't want to get something wrong, that becomes now a default. And that's what you end up defaulting to. So you have to try in context, always in context, to take that risk. And that's key to this as well. Whether it's an art project or whether it's at a job, at school, understand the parameters, understand, what is required, absolutely. And even like the emails, when I say I'm getting emails asking if something is correct, I appreciate those. There's nothing wrong with asking that question, and almost it's important to ask that question to see how far you could possibly go. If you're at work and your boss asks you to do something and you kind of go wild and throw out this amazing idea that's totally missing the point, it could be a great idea, but it's not within the context of what they might have asked you to do. So you have to always, try and find the context, try and find the container that ideas must exist in. But then once you have that established, where can you go? And you will probably get pushback. Absolutely. You will get resistance, justified resistance, instinctual negation. All these things come into play, and you will get that. And that's not a bad thing, because then a conversation can happen, right? If you offer a creative solution to something and you get pushback, if you are confident and you are there's foundation to your creative idea, then you can now have a dialogue back and forth. They say no, you say, well, can I explain it this way? Can I open it up this way? Can I try it this way? And maybe their instinctual negation will soften. Maybe. I don't know them. But that's the kind of give and take. If your first impulse is, here's a creative solution, you get rejected, and you say, okay, well, I tried. Again, I don't know your situation. That could be the right way to go. But also, then you're going to, again, the practice of this, you will end up, the next time this opportunity might come to pass, you will then shut down and you will just do what is asked of you. Now, in this world that we live in, and the way the job market is, and late stage capitalism and all that kind of stuff, just doing your job and picking up your paycheck could be something great for your mental health. I'm not arguing against that. But if you are in a job or a position or with a group of other artists or at school, and you are interested in the things that you are doing for your own sanity, it's necessary for you to take those risks and try something and kind of push an envelope. Not necessarily for the company or for the school or for grades, but for yourself, to kind of begin a practice. There's even something, and I'll put the link in contents, but I'll kind of show the front page here. There's a museum of failure, an entire museum, and I think it's kind of a pop-up museum that goes from place to place. I believe it's in Paris now. And it celebrates all of the different failures that companies have tried, from tech companies to food, to AI, everything. And there are so many of them. And some of them are outright just failures. It was a big swing and a miss. Some, and Nolan Bushnell talks about this in the book, some will have the seed of the next thing, right? Will have the big thing. And there's a reference in here to Apple. With the first Apple computer was, by all definitions, a failure. The Lisa, I believe it was called. And it was too big, it was too expensive, it was too slow, it didn't do what it needed to do. But through that failure, we got the Mac. And now that's been the thing. So every failure has seeds of something that could work. Now, take that out of business and bring that back to yourself. Every failure that you go through or achieve, I call failure an achievement at times, everything you attempt that doesn't really work out, there were probably very clearly elements of that you can then expand on, let it evolve. Maybe the idea wasn't fully understood yet. Maybe you didn't fully understand it yet. And so it takes time. So you can't throw everything out. If you fail at something, being creative, you can't just toss it all out and say, that was crap, I'm never doing that again. You have to kind of reflect now, look at it. What could work? What if you turned this way? What if you opened this up this way? What if you used a different color? What if you used a different font? What if you're in music, what if you kind of remixed it and tried a different angle? What if you sped it up? What if you slowed it down? This happens all the time with even hit songs. You hear early demos and it's the song that we all know is very popular, and then you hear the demo and you're like, this is weird. But they kept at it. There was something in there that kind of continued to drive them. And so this museum is such a beautiful thing to me, because it celebrates those failures. It doesn't admonish them. It doesn't, kind of try and hide them or sweep them under the carpet. It puts them under the bright lights of an exhibit and says, here, look at these things that we tried, and wow, what were we thinking? And at the moment, who knows? But a lot of these innovations, a lot of these attempts did lead to the next thing, and that's no guarantee that the next thing is going to be a hit, but that's how it works. So creativity for yourself now is very much about this. It's about risk and it's about failure. It's about attempting things. If we were geniuses and perfect, everything we would try would be great, wonderful, but we don't live in that world. So we have to learn, we have to practice, we have to evolve, we have to develop. And through those attempts, through those failures, we then have the opportunity to succeed. So it's the same thing when I'm talking about your creative troll, right? Your creative troll is that voice, that thing that stops you, that tells you, no, don't do that, it's too risky, or it'll fail, don't try that. And again, they're not always wrong, but it's a voice that you need to listen to, hear. It's a feeling you need to respond to, but you don't always need to react to it. You can let it exist and then take the step anyway. And there's nothing wrong with that in context, right? Always in context. But that's the give and take. You will have that part of you that doesn't want to get something wrong. And I totally understand that. That is not a wrong feeling. That is usually a correct response, especially in the world we live in, where things move quickly and everything needs to be correct. So if you allow yourself to just hear, listen, take that in, and then take the step anyway. There could be really interesting information in that troll voice, but maybe not all of it, because they will, again, the troll is there to protect you, to keep you kind of safe and head down, let's just get through this. Sometimes that is the correct move, and sometimes you need to kind of shut it up and go forward. Break through the wall, see what happens. What's on the other side of that? Is it going to be a success? Who knows? You don't know. But until you try, until you take that risk failure, you don't know either. So if you say, no, I won't do that, that's not a good idea, you're making that decision on faulty information. So it's only until you get to that end point where you can say, okay, that worked or didn't. And then what could I have changed? What could I have developed? What part of this is still speaking to me that I want to kind of continue to explore moving forward? I want to talk about no shortcuts a little bit more. Available. No, I'm kidding. There's a part of this that kind of connects to what I'm talking about now, and it's in a chapter called The Simplicity and the Complexity of the Work. And this is very important, I think, for myself and for art, for creativity, for anything in that realm, is that usually really great ideas look incredibly simple, right? It's like, oh, why didn't I think of that? And my analogy that I use is usually when you go to a museum and you see a piece of like abstract expressionist art, and it's, let's say the color field work, and this kind of painting, and you stand in front of it, and that was $20 million, and you're looking like, I could do that. Well, the response that I always give to anybody who kind of says that is, one, you didn't, so you really can't argue that. And I would argue also, maybe you can't, because a lot of that simple work, a lot of those simple ideas are housed on top of very complex training, experience, time, multiple attempts at something. These things don't just pop out all perfectly. So I've talked about not trying to be perfect right off the bat and be precise. But there's another side to this as well that I want to read a little bit now. So another issue with so-called perfection is when focusing on details, trying to make something perfect overshadows the whole project. I do not disagree that certain details need intense focus. As this focus can be the difference between an audience completely buying into what you have created and an audience being pulled out of the moment because you, as creator, did not care enough about this or that detail. As a creator, as a creative, let's say, you have to remember, though, that the complete piece of work is one giant detail. So you have to find that balance between a hyper focus on the small details while keeping the full picture into view. I call this a macro-micro approach, a back and forth method of working, going in, agonizing over some small things, but then pull back. See if everything still cohesively is falling into place. And this is the work. This is what would be called development in simple terms, right? As you're putting something together, yeah, you want to really get into and make sure all those details are perfectly being meshed together and this looks great and all this kind of stuff. But is a string of perfect little things a complete package, or is it a string of perfect little things? So it's this pull in, pull out, pull into focus, pull out of focus. So you look at those little details, get it to a point where you're happy with it or where it seems to be working, and then pull back. Now look at the whole thing again. Does it work? Does it feel right? Because it's not just about those tiny details, it is about the whole thing, because that's what people are taking in. So it's this, again, out of focus, into focus. Fine-tune some things, then pull back. Fine-tune some things and then pull back. The other thing why this is important is that you can get lost in those little details, and those little details can at times derail the whole project. If you're trying to achieve this tiny little thing that you want to do and it's not working, you can't get it to where you want it to work, where you have pre-created that idea to exist, you can get frustrated, you can blow up the whole thing, you can not finish the project, you can scrap it all and then start something fresh, which isn't always a bad thing, but it can get in the way. So you have to find those moments. If you're getting frustrated about a little detail, pause, pull back, look at the whole thing again. And I do this constantly with scripts. I do this with even the videos that we're doing now. There are a lot of moments where I'm flubbing words and I'm doing things, but as a whole, I feel that it's rolling pretty good. And sometimes I do pause and try and fine tune something or try and do a clever little thing. Is it always great? Absolutely not. But it works for the thing that I'm talking about, so we move forward. And it's that back and forth. When I work on scripts, it's a long process, as I talked about last class. It can be, 3 to 5 years, 6 years to get something off the ground. So when I do, let's say, different drafts, and there's always multiple, always above 10 different drafts, easy. I try and do like thin passes each time. Right? I don't chop it up. I don't blow it up. I do a thin pass. And then I look at it again. And then I work on this section, maybe like in the second act is not working. So I'll work on 2 or 3 scenes in there only, and then step back and read the whole thing again. Does it flow? Is it working? Is it doing what we need it to do? And this idea of the micro macro can help you in all of your projects. Right? Focus on those details. Details are important. They are very important. They are the structural work, but don't get lost in them because you will get frustrated and you might not finish the thing. So go in, play around with some of those details, and some of those details could be super fun as well. This isn't just a slog. Some of these things could be really interesting to you. It's a new trick. It's a new thing. So have fun with it. Get in there, but then pull yourself back and then look at the whole thing. And a double back now. When I talk about context and containers, no matter how tight that container might be, no matter how quick something needs to happen, creativity can always exist. It doesn't have to be world-changing. This is the thing to remember as well. It doesn't have to change business. It doesn't have to innovate, and change the whole world. It can just be a little creative choice. It's something in there that you add. And if we want to get basic, it could be as simple as doing something interesting with a PowerPoint presentation, or word choice, like getting into some word choice in a document, maybe. Anything can be a creative choice. And it's healthy, I believe, when you are going through work that you have to do, like the things that you need to do, like an assignment for school. Can you find moments where you can enjoy it and find some creativity within that? If it's always a slog, I guarantee 99% that you will be not happy with whatever you've done, or you really don't enjoy the process. You got to find something that you can sink your teeth into. I talk to students about how they work their classes, and a lot of students will kind of leave electives to the final year. They'll do all their core work, and then they'll have like 2 or 3 electives at the very end, and that can be super fun. Sometimes you might choose a class that you thought was going to be super fun, and it turns out to be rough. Maybe the prof is a little flat. Maybe there's a monotone that he speaks in, or it's just information after information. And that can get in the way, and you can then start doing that work defensively. And I've talked about this in a number of occasions too, of you never want to approach a project, even a school assignment, you don't want to approach it defensively as in, oh, this is a thing I have to do. You have to try and approach it with some curiosity, with some interest. It doesn't have to be life-changing, but it should have something of interest to you. So sometimes when we leave those electives and we get those rough classes, they can also screw up your GPA. So the remedy for this is to find your in. What is your in? You have to find something that makes you curious. That's your job. That's on you. And this is a thing to learn as well, whether it's school, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a job. It's not just about you getting things. You have to participate in this at some point. And so you have to find the things that are of interest to you and make you curious, and that's your job to step forward. So if you have a class that's not really that interesting, your job now, because you have to get through it, is to find that thing. And I think I've talked about this when I go see shows and I don't really like the show, because even after the first 10 minutes, I know it's going to be bad. My job now, just for myself, is to find something that I'm really curious about. A light cue, a sound cue, an actor's performance, some of the writing. It doesn't have to be the whole thing, but I need to find something. And if we can layer that practice into the rest of our lives now we have something to work with. If you're going out and you don't really feel like going out, but you have to, it's a promise you made. So don't approach the whole thing defensively. And I know it can be exhausting. I totally understand that, right? And sometimes we just don't feel like it. But if you have to go, what can you do to make it interesting for you? Could it be something you're wearing? Could it be somebody you'd like to talk to? Could it be a game that you play with yourself during this event? Something, so that you don't approach all the work kind of from this, you're on the back foot. And like now you're in defensive mode and you're just trying to avoid things. Can you just be present and find little things that make you curious? So within context, if you have parameters for an assignment, if you have a job that requires you to do this, 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 and this, can you now find moments where you can add a little creativity and add a little something of yourself within it? And that is the fun. That is the work. That is the interest that you will carry through to be able to do it. Another thing that I talk a lot about to the drama students when I'm with them, or arts practitioners in general when I'm speaking to them, is no one is required to care. It's a hard pill to swallow, and usually it's met with kind of a face of some kind. But no matter what you do, no matter how creative you feel you are, or no matter how wonderful you feel the work is that you have done, no one is required to care. That's not their job. It could be great. It could be wonderful. I've talked to theater practitioners who have put up a show and maybe they didn't advertise enough and not that many people showed up. And instead of wondering what they did to not make this happen, they're now mad at people for not coming. They're like, why, I did this thing and why isn't it not being celebrated as genius? Like, that's not anybody's job. So you, as a creative being, need to find the reason why you're doing it, because it's not up to the external world. And again, a lot of things are so much out of our control that it can get very frustrating. So what are you bringing to yourself? When I produce a show, or when I write a new script, or I make a new painting, it's not for anybody else. It's for me. I'm trying to entertain myself. Now, we become artists because we need to communicate with the world. And we choose our medium to do that in. And we hope that people respond. We want people to respond, but we can't control that. So within the process of making art, you need to find your enjoyment. What's your in? So when I'm talking to an actor and they are not getting cast, or they're not getting the bigger parts and all this kind of stuff, it's like, well, are you owed these things? Whether you went to school or not, it doesn't matter. Are you owed a bigger role? Are you owed a better part? Again, there's so many factors working not against you, but out of your control, that if that is your goal, is to be famous or to climb the ladder, well, there are things you can maybe do to do that. I'm not going to talk about them here. But it's about you. They're not required to give you a job. They're not required to cast you in their show. A reviewer is not required to tell everyone how great your performance was. You have to enjoy the work you're doing and then just do it. It's a hard thing to kind of swallow, but if you like acting, to keep this story metaphor going, why do you like acting? Is it like because you like standing on stage and people applauding after you've done a thing? That's not acting. That's ego. Do you like the process of acting? Do you like being in a rehearsal hall with other creatives? Do you like working a script? Do you like putting on costumes and saying different words? And like being on stage can be very exciting, but again, that's what you want to do. Whether you get recognized for that, not part of the process. So you need to enjoy the things that you're doing. It's, again, sounds simple, but it is incredibly complex. I make art not to become famous or to become rich, because that's a silly thing to try and do, and obviously I have failed at that. But I make art because it does bring me joy. I enjoy the process of doing it. I think it makes me a better human being, makes me empathetic. I can talk about this with other people. I can get into details and have conversations about process with people, and it fills me with some excitement. I can be super curious, and I'm never. And the fun part about this is that if you do enjoy a process, you never stop learning. You're constantly growing. You're constantly evolving. There is no finish point where you're like, "Yep, okay, I've made it. I'm great. I'm great." That doesn't, like, there is no end point. It's a continuous thing. So you have to allow that to exist within your creativity, that no one is required to care. No one is required to acknowledge your creative genius. It's not what it's for. You need to do it for you. That's what you have to find. That is the hard work. It is hard to do, to find the thing that makes you feel good. And within that, if you are trying to be creative, you have to find your voice. Don't do what somebody else is doing. Do your thing. If you like it, if you enjoy it, chances are somebody else will. Right? You can't be the only person that likes this thing. Now, is your audience going to be 10 people or 10 million? Out of your control. You have no control over that. But if you are doing it for the love of it, for the joy of it, somebody else will feel that energy and they will be into it as well. There are countless works of art that were, whether it's painting, sculpture, theater, film, music, that on the moment of their release, let's say, were panned by critics, were ignored by the public, sold very little copies, but over time, an audience was found. Could they have predicted that? Could they have controlled that? Absolutely not. Now, flip that script, and there are albums that get released, let's say if we talk about music now, or even film, small things that get released and become huge. They just get into the zeitgeist and they become massive hits. Is that something that could be planned? If you're doing like pop music and there are formulas, but formulas get old and formulas need to change. So again, no guarantee. Sometimes it's just pure luck and timing. Yes, the material is good, but whether it becomes successful or not is sometimes a roll of the dice. So you have to find, one, your reason for doing it. You have to enjoy it. You have to like it. And two, what's your voice? Who are you? I want to know that. I don't want to know that you can impersonate someone else. What is your voice? So I promise I'm keeping this one shorter. It's the last one. I want to say that I've started watching the videos and I'm liking what I'm seeing so far. And what I always love about these projects is the diversity that people are bringing to the medium and the things that they try. Even if it's the same device that two different students might be using, it's still going to be different. And that's also important to remember. You don't have to reinvent the wheel because it is coming through you, so therefore it is already unique. So I'm going to try and get through those by the end of the week, and I'm really enjoying them so far. A couple of housekeeping things. We still have one more quiz coming up at the end of the week, and you have your discussion post on the process of creating your troll and sitting in these lectures in this class. Has anything come to mind? It's a discussion post. I want to hear your thoughts. And finally, the last thing, I want to say thank you. Thank you for being a part of this. Thank you for signing up for the course. Thank you for sticking around. And take care of yourself. Be creative out there. Don't finish this class and that's the end of your creativity. Take some chances. See where some of this material might be able to be layered into your future selves. Not everything, but what can you take away with you? So take care of yourself, be kind to yourself, and be creative.